Thank you, Russell, and to everyone out there, happy Fraud Week. So as Russell introduced, my name's Alice Hutchings. What I'm going to first do today is present first of all, I'll get the computer working. Present a case study, and this is an example of fraud that took place using phone porting, and it was published in IT News in December 2011. I'll use this case study to demonstrate the role of rational choice and deterrence in relation to fraud. So in this case, George Craig, whose name I believe has been changed, had his online banking credentials captured when the computer he was using, a company laptop, was infected with a keylogger recording his keystrokes. While his bank required a verification code sent by mobile phone to be entered when transferring funds to unfamiliar accounts, the fraudsters, after obtaining his mobile phone number and date of birth, called his mobile phone provider and ported the number to a prepaid account with another carrier, allowing them to receive the verification code. Within half an hour of the number being ported, his account had been compromised and $45,000 had been taken. The $45,000 was reinstated to Craig's account, with the bank covering the loss. Although allegedly the bank's fraud squad were able to track down where the money had been spent and CCTV footage was available, the police case was suspended pending the bank requesting the matter to be proceeded with, and it appears in the meantime the offender left the country. Now, I'll talk to you a little bit about the routine activity approach, which is a theoretical framework. The premise of Cohen and Felson's routine activity approach is that predatory crime occurs when there's the presence of a likely offender and suitable targets and the absence of capable guardians. The emphasis is on the criminal acts rather than individual factors. So this can be visually displayed using this diagram. We have the chemistry of crime, which is the capable guardian or the lack of a capable guardian, the presence of a suitable target and the presence of a likely offender. Now, suitable targets can include people as well as objects whose position in time and space puts them at risk of a criminal attack, and I'd like to point out there is absolutely no resemblance here. So in relation to the case study outlined earlier, the suitable target is the funds contained in Craig's bank account, as well as his mobile phone number, because that was used in order to commit the offence. So Felson and Clark explained target suitability using the Viva model. Value refers to the value of item to the offender. Inertia is the weight of the item. Visibility is the exposure of items to the offender, while access is the ease of access in which an offender can get to a target. Now, scams conducted online can target a multitude of potential victims with very little cost to the offender. Even if the scammer obtained a small amount from each victim, the overall amount can be considerable, and this is known as a small value, high volume fraud. Digital funds can be quite portable and targets can be highly visible and accessible online. In Craig's case, the profit to the offenders of $45,000 was quite high. With the use of a keylogger, the target was visible and after the number had been ported, easily accessible. Being online, the inertia was low, and you compare this to, for example, burglary or trying to steal a washing machine where the weight's quite high. Now, the concept of guardians is not limited to law enforcement officers or law enforcement agencies, but includes citizens going about the day-to-day routine activities, housewives, doormen, neighbours, co-workers, or anyone else who has a powerful impact against crime. In relation to fraud, guardians could also include banks, organisations that retain data about their customers and account holders. Offending therefore occurs when guardians are not present or not capable of protecting the target. With the case study of Craig, there are a number of potential guardians that could have intervened to prevent the fraud from occurring. First, Craig could have ensured that any internet banking he conducted was done using a laptop that had adequate protection, such as antivirus software. Furthermore, the company whose laptop he was using could have ensured that their computers were patched and had the appropriate anti-malware software installed. However, in addition to this, guardians included the bank who Craig held the account with and the mobile phone carriers who ported the number and accepted the new account. If any of these guardians had intervened earlier, the fraud could have been prevented. Now, although one of the pillars of this theory relates to the supply of likely offenders, the routine activity approach deliberately avoids any notions about criminal motivation. So this is where rational choice theory complements the routine activity approach. So first of all, to give you an overview of the rational choice theory, this assumes that offenders calculate the perceived costs and benefits of crime with the assumption that they seek some type of advantage from the action, be it money, sex, or excitement. Rational choice theory looks at how offenders in particular situations make these calculations. The theory acknowledges that offenders' perceptions of costs and benefits can be subjective, constrained as they are by time, the offender's cognitive abilities, and the availability of relevant information, and therefore may not be rational at all. Other choice structuring properties are offence-specific. So, for example, when offenders weigh up the type and amount of benefit likely against the perceived risk of detection and punishment, they take into consideration their skills and the skills needed to successfully commit the offence, as well as the availability of necessary equipment or situations. In addition, each of these considerations may not have equal weight. So, for example, a high likelihood of detection may be more influential in deterring crime than harsh punishments. Rational choice theory and the routine activity approach are contemporary criminological theories. They do not see the answer in reducing crime in changing the morality of people or society, but rather in changing the situation in which crime occurs. This is particularly problematic when crime occurs on the internet, due to the wide expanse of cyberspace and the ease in which potential victims and offenders can interact. Offenders do not have to physically relocate in order for crime to be displaced to more vulnerable targets. In addition, one type of crime can produce opportunities for another. So, for example, fraudulent crimes may lead to money laundering offences. And this is one reason why it's important that potential perpetrators are deterred from offending in the first place, known as general deterrence, or from re-offending in the future, or specific deterrence. Deterrence from crime can be achieved by increasing the perceived effort of crime, increasing the perceived risks, reducing the anticipated rewards, and removing excuses for crime. Now, in relation to scams, the costs are actually quite low with a minimal chance of arrest. The benefits are potentially high with large financial returns possible. Scam offenders may be more likely than street criminals to engage in rational choice decision making and may also engage in jurisdiction shopping or other displacement-related activities to avoid detection. As we saw with Craig's case study, the offender was able to transfer $45,000 before leaving the country and the matter was not proceeded with. So there's considerable evidence that white-collar crime and online offenders believe they can offend with impunity due to challenges investigating and prosecuting these types of offences. Research indicates that offenders are less likely to consider the possible legal consequences of their actions, the harshness of available punishments, or the negative reactions of one's parents, spouse, employer, peers, or other significant others when compared to the potential benefits of their actions. Many offenders are unaware of the severity of punishment for the types of offences that they are involved in. Therefore, the focus should be on the certainty rather than the severity of punishment. Now, rather than trying to prevent all types of fraud, focusing effort on those that yield the greatest deterrence benefit will be a more efficient use of resources. Traditionally, law enforcement focuses appear to be on high value but low volume type offences. Focusing attention on hot products or those targets that are most attractive may have comparable benefits in the long term. So, for example, offenders may concentrate on small value, high volume offences as law enforcement face considerable challenges in investigating these types of offences. These difficulties include the problems in trying to establish the extent of an offender's actions, as victims may report to a variety of agencies and banks in different countries. Difficulties to gain victim cooperation, particularly for a small amount, again across a number of jurisdictions, and where corporations are involved as reputational aspects, as well as the expense involved for law enforcement agencies. And smaller proceeds may be easier to launder without detection. So, for example, you may have an offender in an unknown location targeting victims in multiple jurisdictions, who then may report to a variety of different agencies. So, for example, in Australia, scam recipients and victims may report matters to state or federal policing agencies, state and territory consumer protection agencies, the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, the Australian Communications and Media Authority, the Australian Securities and Investments Commission, and the Australian Tax Office. Other organisations that may receive complaints include banks and financial institutions, online trading and auction sites, as well as social media sites. Expand this to multiple victims in multiple jurisdictions, and the picture relating to just one offender becomes very complicated. In addition, victims may not even notice small value frauds or know that they have been victimised, so may not report the matter at all. So the diagram I showed you before with the chemistry of crime can be applied to these small value, high volume frauds. Suitable targets include the huge number of people using the internet globally for email and banking who may have a poor understanding of the risks and how to protect themselves. Likely offenders with the extended scope of the internet offered by the internet can include areas where poverty is rife and people are poor or in need of money. West Africa and Eastern European nations in particular have a reputation for some types of online frauds, but it is also noted that many frauds may even originate from Australia. Now, guardianship of online crimes is difficult due to cross-border issues, lack of funding in police for computer crime investigations, and the low profile of fraud in law enforcement priorities. Now, there is some good news. The Australian Government is planning to undertake a feasibility study in relation to establishing a national reporting facility for cybercrime. In relation to fraud, a national reporting centre allows for the development of an improved response in relation to prevention and intervention. This would allow for the collation of information domestically, which can also be shared with the international community. Data collected by a national reporting centre can be used to raise awareness of victimisation, enable resources to be allocated effectively and appropriately, evaluate intervention and prevention strategies, compile intelligence which can be used for policing and prevention activities, provide feedback to those who have detected and reported matters, enable information on new crime methodologies to be shared with others at risk of similar types of activities, and compile statistical data for trend identification, data mining and analysis. So thank you very much for your attention,